Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. I'm excited about this episode as we have Alex Bakman from a company called VKernel, and Alex is the CEO and the founder of VKernel. And as we always do in the DABCC TV episodes, we're going to actually not just talk about their solutions, but we're going to show them off. So I'm quite excited about this. As you guys can see in front of you, the VKernel Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer appliance. And this is actually a beta 2.0 release. And Alex will talk all about this and what we're looking at. But before we dive into the demo or the walkthrough of their solution today, I have a couple quick questions for you, Alex.
Sure.
Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to show us the latest and greatest from VKernel.
Oh, thanks for letting me do this.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so for the first question, real quickly, can you just tell everybody who is Alex? Who are you?
Who is Alex? Well, I've been in the systems management business for the past 15 years. I've started a couple of successful companies, all in systems management space. One in the Lotus Notes monitoring space, another one in configuration and change management. Basically, my experience in the past has been prior to all of my entrepreneurial ventures, software development, IT, systems management in a Fortune 500 company. So kind of a culmination of managing large-scale infrastructure, writing software for large-scale infrastructure, and more recently, building companies to solve systems management problems.
Very nice, very nice. I love that question because we have to add a little bit of context on who you are. People might want to. Well, who is this guy talking?
Sure.
We can't see you, so we got to know who you are. So anyway, and I must also say, anytime I hear the word Lotus Notes, I was a Lotus Notes certified guy. I'm a huge fan of Notes. I think I've probably told you that before, right?
I think you have.
Yeah.
There's still 35 million Notes users out there.
Yep. I am a huge Notes fan, although I do use Exchange. just like every other big, giant Notes fan.
We won't hold that again.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, okay. So for my second question, we're looking at this VKernel Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer appliance. Can you talk just briefly before we dive into actually showing it? What is your goal for this? What is the VKernel Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer?
Yeah, so the whole point here, Doug, is that people are scaling up their virtual infrastructures. What inevitably happens is they run out of resources, right? They run out of core 4 resources: memory, storage, CPU, to much lesser degree network. So it's essentially the core 3 that presents a huge problem for people. Now, as you know, in a shared environment, in a virtualized environment, all the resources are shared, right? So the memory, storage, all of these key resources are shared amongst all virtual machines. So in this environment, more so than in any other environment, and primarily I'm referring to Windows world, where you had one application running on one server, you never really had to worry about sharing memory or sharing CPU or sharing storage. But in this environment, in a virtualized environment, resources are shared. And since resources are shared, from a performance point of view, to make sure that you have excellent performance in your systems, what happens is if the resources are shared and the resources are getting constrained, if there is some kind of a bottleneck that exists in resources, that inevitably leads to a performance problem or even worse, downtime. So we built Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer with the idea of to basically, since in this environment capacity equals performance, the idea is to quickly narrow in and find current capacity bottlenecks, future capacity bottlenecks, to actually predict future capacity bottlenecks, to help administrators figure out where they have available capacity so they know how many more VMs They can fit into a cluster or a resource pool or a host, and generally help them manage capacity in kind of a predictive manner, not only interactively through this dashboard that I'm showing, but also by monitoring key capacity trends that I will show you later. So the idea here is to very, very quickly nail down current issues in the environment that are impacting my performance, that are causing availability issues, not only in terms of what's happening right now in the environment, but to actually make predictions about future performance problems that are going to be taking place in your environment.
Very cool, very cool. And I'm excited to see this because this is the first time I've seen a 2.0 beta. And for those of you out there that have downloaded and tried out the VKernel Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer 1.0 version, as you can see in front of you, this is drastically different. So, with no further ado, let's just dive into it. Sound good,
Okay.
Alex?
Sure thing. Well, we absolutely did a lot of stuff in terms of polishing, typical software development, right? 1.0, you're concerned about getting sort of the meat and potatoes out. 2.0, you actually have the luxury of, spending a little bit of time on the statics and really making it much more pleasing. So let me kind of step you through, Doug, with kind of major pieces of how I would use the software to identify current capacity bottlenecks, future capacity bottlenecks, figure out where I have available capacity to add new VMs, and then also demonstrate to you how to set up this software to automatically monitor 7x24 all of your key capacity trends. Before we dive in, I think a key point I want to make is that, as you know, Virtual Center, does a little bit of graphing in terms of kind of the core 4. But what we have done is we have taken the data out of Virtual Center and really put it through a very advanced set of analytics in order to boil it down to what I'm going to show you here on the screen. I mean, behind the scenes, there are literally thousands of capacity metrics that got analyzed in order to boil this down to what we're showing you. So, jumping right in the first quadrant here, what we're showing is, essentially current capacity bottlenecks, and more specifically, top 5 capacity bottlenecks. So the idea here is very simple. As a VMware administrator, I come in the morning, I have information at my fingertips that shows me exactly where I need to go focus my efforts this morning. I mean, these are the current issues that are impacting my environment today. So as you can see, on the first column, we basically show you where the current issue exists, if it's an issue at all. Then in the second column, we are telling you what the constraining resource is. So, for example, in the cluster VKernel, my constraining resource is memory. In the third column, it's giving me a utilization trend. So, what kind of a constraint is it? Well, it showed me that I'm about 59% utilized in memory in this VKernel cluster. Now, some people say, hey, 59% memory utilization is not an issue. That's no problem. The color coding and the percentage utilizations are all configurable. So you could come up with your own sets of utilization constraint. Now, for example, you could say that, hey, yellow to me means, 75 to 85% utilization. And so what you get is your color-coded map that shows you exactly, where the constraining, what resource is being constrained. And the fourth trend here is just that. It's a trend. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? So, for example, here in the VKernel cluster, it looks like it's already 59% utilized, and the long-term trend here is it's getting worse. In other words, the utilization is increasing. In some cases, it may be, for example, here in the empty cluster, it says that it's going sideways, right? So you can see not only sort of the current utilization trend, but also what is the future direction. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? So in one screen here, right, we basically boil down all the stats and all that data to where am I having problems right now. Now, luckily in my environment, I have essentially 3 clusters here in a warning situation, in the yellow zone. And the other 2 below are in the green zone. So I don't really have a set of current problems. But clearly, if I was seeing red over here in the current problem set, then that's something that I would want to, dive in right away and start investigating. Now, we also giving VMware administrators the ability to kind of zoom in and get a little bit more detailed view of all of my resources in terms of clusters, hosts, and resource pools, and more specifically, how they fare across CPU utilization, memory, storage, and CPU ready percentage. So I can get an overall feel, how am I doing in a particular cluster or resource pool. So maybe I am memory constrained, but I'm not CPU constrained, as an example here on the VKernel cluster, right? So I can basically, what it's doing is it's giving me actionable information that I can use to evaluate what should be my next move here. What should I do? If I'm constrained, am I constrained across a particular resource? If I'm going to make some moves, if I'm going to move some VMs from one system to another, where should I move this to? That's essentially the idea. And I can sort along any of the columns and really kind of figure out what's going on in my environment constraint-wise. So that's for current capacity bottlenecks. In future capacity bottlenecks, we've actually come up with what we call inside a crystal ball. I mean, essentially the idea here is to make future predictions about where capacity constraints are developing so that you as a VMware administrator have time to react and actually make some changes in order for this future prediction to actually not to happen, right? Because the whole idea is prevention is much better than reacting to a problem. So here, for example, I could see that, here's my Citrix pool, and I am having a CPU constraint in that pool right now. So I probably define my CPU constraint as something like 70% utilization plus. So I immediately see that it is running into an issue right now. If I zoom in, I can kind of get a broader view of my future constraints. So I can see not only my top 5 predictions, but also, other clusters, hosts, and resource pools, and to see exactly what is the constraining resource, and more importantly, in how many days will the problem happen. This is, again, this type of information is, obviously not available in Virtual Center, and, what's behind the analysis here is looking at 30 days plus of historical data, looking at the trends in your environment, looking at factors such as what percentage of VMs are powered off, what percentage of VMs are powered on, what kinds of things are you doing in your environment, so that we can fairly accurately predict, given your past trends and actions, what is the next 30, 60, 90 days hold for you in terms of your capacity.
Very cool. If we can go back to the screen you were at previously, I have a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you head back to the main screen for me?
Yep.
Okay, to the left, you have the current capacity bottlenecks, and that's what's currently going on. And then you just showed us the future capacity. But when I look at the future, I see now I'm experiencing a CPU, issues or bottleneck within my Citrix pool and what have you. But I don't see that over in my current. But now to me means current. So that brings up a little bit of confusion for me.
Right. So what the reason it's showing it in this particular case in the now is that the particular so what I'm actually demoing in our QA environment, and so these particular resource pools are specifically constrained so that we do a lot of the testing in these particular resource pools.
Makes sense.
Right. So if you look at this particular set, I mean it's a very different set than what I'm showing you here. So in other words, it's because of the way the environment is set up. In a real production environment, what you would see here is mostly green and some yellow with giving you many days to a problem.
Makes sense. It's just this is for obviously development and also to show it to us. If we just show everyone a green environment, that's no fun, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it doesn't really help us. So it doesn't show what you guys can and can't do. So it was a good question nonetheless. So
Absolutely. Yeah, a much more realistic case here is to see things like, hey, in 20 days I'm going to run out of memory in the cluster, or in 15 days I'm going to run out of storage in this particular resource pool. That's kind of more of what the typical users would be. So sorry, Doug, it's just kind of a quick setup here on my end.
No, don't be sorry. It makes complete sense to me. I've done many a demo in my life, and everyone else out there that's ever seen or done a demo knows exactly what we're talking about, you're talking about. So what else do you have to show us? There's a couple other boxes, and I know you guys dive a lot deeper, so
so a couple of more things here. So in addition to current and future capacity bottlenecks, the next thing from a capacity management perspective, that's something that VMware administrators need pretty much every day. As you deploy new VMs, the question is, where do I put them, right? And, where do I have available resources? And so, what you would do if you didn't have this kind of software is you would be kind of hunting and packing through Virtual Center, looking at clusters, looking inside resource pools, trying to figure out, okay, if I add this VM, am I okay memory-wise? Okay, if I'm okay memory-wise, would I be okay? Storage, do I have enough storage? Do I have enough CPU? I mean, it's just a very time-consuming exercise, especially if you're deploying a lot of new VMs, which is the case pretty much with everybody these days.
Yeah.
As people are, scaling up their virtual environment. So what we've done here is we came up with this kind of a concept. We call it capacity availability map. And the idea of a capacity availability map is to be able to essentially in one screen to show you not only for every cluster host or resource pool how many VMs you're currently running in each, but then to also show you how many more VMs you can fit into each one. So the idea here is that I can very quickly, go through this kind of a capacity availability map and make a decision as to where's the best place for me to deploy these new VMs.
That's very cool. And in the 1.0 version I'm currently running, which after we get out of this call, Alex, you're going to have to send me over this 2.0 version. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I absolutely adored it because as I would bring on new virtual machines, which, like you said, we're constantly doing, I would just come into the Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer and look, put it on ESX4, and that's exactly what I would do, especially as I'm moving things around to make room. I mean, it's just really simple to use because it's right here in front of my face. And that's the big thing I like about your solution. So
that's what we try to do, Doug, to make it really simple and just save people time. So there's there's not much guessing. And at any level, by the way, at any level in your environment, whether, you're looking at the environment here, which is what I'm showing you, a top-level view, or you can drill down into a particular cluster or a particular resource pool and get an analysis of it in context, right? So sort of the idea is exactly the same, is to be able to very quickly identify, how many more VMs I can fit in a particular resource boundary.
Well, very cool. Well, there's a couple more blocks on this main page. Can you talk about these?
Sure. So also another useful thing is to be able to figure out pretty quickly what are my three most limited data stores, right? So here what we're doing is from the perspective of the particular focus, whether it's at a cluster level or at a host level or at the total environment level, list out the data stores and then show total space available and free space available. So again, the idea is, as an admin, you're moving pretty quickly. You need to kind of keep an eye on what's going on with your environment storage-wise, and this allows you to very quickly zoom in and see total space availability, free space availability. Something else, in many large environments, a lot of VMware admins are, dealing with storage people. So when you're dealing with storage people, they don't necessarily see the VMware ESX environment the same way as VMware admins do, right? So we have something called LAN IDs and some additional information that can kind of help VMware admins bridge the gap between VMware people and the storage people.
Oh, that is very cool. And this is definitely enhanced from the 1.0 version. This is one of the areas also I'm a big fan of about your solution, because I love going in and seeing exactly how much storage I'm using, because I don't have a lot of it, right? So I'm constantly sort of, let's delete this so I can have room for this. So I find that very useful.
Yeah, that definitely. And another thing that we're doing here is, we're showing top resource consumers in this box, right? So as a VMware admin, you want to know who's hugging your resources, right? So I can pretty quickly zoom in here and kind of understand, which virtual machines are using what resources and who are some of the top users. So then furthermore, you can zoom in and get a much more detailed view of your top CPU consumers, your top memory consumers, your top storage consumers, right?
Very cool.
Get into the disk read consumers to see, who's putting I/O, who's creating I/O bottlenecks in your environment, which VMs are sending out a lot of data and constraining your environment. By the way, kind of the overall big feature that we've added to the 2.0 is information to help you identify disk I/O bottlenecks. We covered, the core 3 in the previous release, and the big feedback from the users was, that's great. What would also help us is to identify disk I/O bottlenecks, and we spent a lot of time getting into the disk reads and writes and throughputs and CPU wait states and kind of the typical metrics that are helping VMware administrators identify I/O related bottlenecks in their environment.
Very cool. That's very impressive, Alex.
And in this screen, thanks, Doug. In this screen, you can really kind of dig in and see, in a big environment. If you have 300 ESX hosts, clearly there's a lot of data here and a lot of screens. So if I want to dig in a particular area, let's say I'm getting concerned about the disk read consumers, what I can do here is I can zoom in and really specifically focused on looking at virtual machines and their particular disk read information and see who's really consuming the resources in my environment as far as the I/O is concerned.
That's very impressive, and I must admit I was one of those people that wanted to know more information about my SAN also. And in fact, in communicating with a few of my my big time virtualization buddies, right? And both of us, both the one I'm thinking in particular, we were both, come on, give me some more information about the SAN. And that's more than we wanted, but it's everything. I mean, that's very impressive. I'm very happy to see that. Another thing I noticed in that screen was the word HyperV. Does this now support HyperV?
No, not yet. Not yet. But clearly, we think that Microsoft is going to carve out a good chunk of the market, especially in the SMB space with some, medium and small enterprises. And, from a long-term perspective, that's something very much on our horizon.
Very cool. Very cool. I look forward to that. I think, what's going to happen in the reality of the situation, as I always like to say, is that, VMware's light years have had ahead of both Zen Server and HyperV, right? I mean, we can all agree on that.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, companies, you were going to find companies with a bit or, a lot of VMware and some HyperV. It's really simple to go deploy Server 2008, and enable Hyper-V. We don't even have to install it. We just have to enable it, right? And then start creating some VMs for some, for maybe some just smaller use cases. So it's going to be definitely, we're going to find enterprises with, everything in it, not just VMware. So it'll be nice to be able to get a big picture of both environments.
Absolutely, and I think any good systems management tool, should be hypervisor agnostic. I mean, it should make the hypervisor dependencies, really a non-issue because the administrator of a virtual environment is going to be managing, most likely a number of different platforms, and so I think that. I think a good systems management tool should enable the person to manage whatever they end up with in the long run.
I totally agree.
So that's a little bit of where we are. Again, this is still beta, just giving you a little bit of a preview here, and but we've made a lot of significant improvements in it from a UI perspective in terms of the understanding the disk I/O bottlenecks, and in kind of with adding a lot of information around CPU constraints, around CPU ready, disk ready, etc. So still in development, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a preview.
Well, this is absolutely great. I have a couple more questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What does it take to set it up? Let's say somebody wants to go ahead and download, well, first of all, is the 2.0 beta available for people?
It will be shortly, yeah.
It will be shortly. So when it is ready, what do people need to do to download it and or to download and evaluate the 1.0 that's currently out there?
Well, this is one of the things, Doug, that really separates us from the rest of the pack. So we only deliver the software as a virtual appliance. That being said, it is the deployment process, which is really streamlined. Basically, all they need to do is go to our website, download a compressed virtual appliance. If they are using a Virtual Center 2.5, then the process is literally one-click deployment. You just import the appliance into your Virtual Center, and you're done. It's literally as simple as that. If you're not on 2.5 a Virtual Center, then the process is just a little bit longer, but not bad. I mean, you essentially have to go through the converter and import the virtual appliance into your environment. No agents to install. You import it, you point it at your Virtual Center. It stays synced up from that point on with your Virtual Center, so any changes you make in your Virtual Center, it automatically learns about these changes. So if you had a host, you add VMs, etc., there's no additional administration that you need to do in the product. It stays totally data synchronized with your Virtual Center. There's a number of product reviews out there on the net. Somebody actually timed the deployment, and even for a good-sized environment, it was about 23 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's the difference. Being a virtual appliance as well as further designing in the quick deployment capability. That's the difference that it makes. So for a lot of people out there, there have been, burned in the past with complicated systems management tools that come with, fat manuals, with 150 features when you only need 2, with deployment projects for these tools that go into weeks. I mean, we definitely did not want to be repeating the sins of the past in systems management. I mean, this is something that even in a very large ESX environment, people can get up and running and literally get this visibility into their environment, in the matter of minutes. And even if you're running multiple virtual centers and collecting a lot of information, I mean, by the end of the day, you'll gain visibility into your capacity constraints.
Absolutely. In fact, when I evaluated, and I still have it running, like I said, I use it all the time, the 1.0 release, it actually took longer to download than it took to get everything up and running.
Yep, I believe that.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it goes back to kind of my philosophy on, the systems management tools are there to help VMware administrator, not to create another installation project, right? So they have to be small, nimble, easy to use, easy to deploy. Otherwise, it's sort of like, the cure is worse than the pain.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And that's what keeps a lot of us from even trying these solutions. We don't have the time for it, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So
I mean, time is, we're talking about constraints here. Let's talk about real human constraints.
Yeah.
Time is the number one constraint.
Absolutely.
Even more important to a lot of VMware administrators, than getting the money to buy the product, is people just don't have the time to dedicate to evaluating solutions. So everything that we're doing at VKernel is optimized for solving that particular bottleneck, is to provide a very quick, streamlined experience for a VMware administrator where they can literally deploy it, very quickly see the value, right, in their environment and solve a real-world problem.
Well, perfect. Alex, again, thank you so much for your time today. And as always, I'll give you the last word. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up, but I'll give you the last word. And maybe, is there anything else you'd like to show us?
No, I think pretty much it. I mean, in addition to the interactive part, you don't have to sit there looking at the screen 7x24. You can go in and add alerts, which are essentially a way of getting email and SNMP notification when some of these trends take place, right? So I can set up alerts not only for current conditions, but also can set up alert for future conditions. So, if I, for example, want to get notified when my storage utilization is about to hit, particular threshold, so that I can order more storage and have enough time to replenish my storage, I can set up these kind of predictive alerts that will help me really manage resources in my environment and alert me before I actually run out of resources, so that I can, go ahead and replenish whatever I'm running out of. So these alerts, I think, Doug, is this people going to realize that monitoring is not just server monitoring anymore, that you really need to be monitoring core 4 resources. And if you have predictive capability to identify resource constraints and notify appropriate people, that this kind of a predictive, preventive monitoring is going to be very important in the future. And, this is one of the 5 patented areas that we have in the Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer.
Very cool. And then I see you can also save reports as PDF, or you can generate reports and save these off as PDF. Can we email them to people, I imagine, things like that?
That's exactly the idea. Yep, that's exactly the idea. So if you have to justify, purchasing some more hardware, you're not just waving hands in front of management. You have, real proof, that shows what you're running out of, and being able to justify additional hardware for your environment.
You bet. We can just set up a report to email our boss every single day until they say, okay, I don't want to see that anymore. We'll buy it for you.
Exactly.
We'll buy the new servers.
Depends on your boss, but yeah, I mean people today, Doug, when it comes to capacity planning, are, as I'm sure you know, are running blind.
Yeah.
Right, or driving blind, whatever the favorite expression you want to use. And the what we do is we kind of help them turn the lights on, so they understand exactly what's going on there in their environment, capacity-wise. Are they pushing their environment too hard and running into performance problems, or the other case where there are a lot of environments where people are not pushing their $50,000 ESX boxes and multi-million-dollar SANs, are not pushing them hard enough, and the cost of VMs is actually more than the physical servers they replace. There's plenty of those out there too.
You bet. No, I totally agree with you. And again, you can do this in just a matter of minutes, or for the administrator, they log into the site. The web console, and see exactly what's going on and drill down. Or they just set up alerts and sit back and wait for the Capacity Bottleneck Analyzer to inform them that there's something up and coming that they need to be aware of. So,
exactly.
Cool stuff. Very cool stuff. Well, again, is there anything else you'd like to show us?
No, I think this is good. We'll kick off the 2.0 beta shortly here, and so I'd welcome you and other people out there in the VMware world to download the beta, give it a shot, and give us some feedback.
Well, definitely, and for everyone out there listening, definitely stay tuned to DABCC.com, and as soon as that beta is available, we will let you know. And also, if you're looking for more information about the amazing tools these guys are creating, VKernel is creating, just go out to their website, and that is www.vkernel.com, and that is spelled www.vkernel.com. So on that note, Alex, I thank you so much for your time today and for showing us, something that's, not everyone gets a chance to see yet because it's still in beta and it's not for everyone's eyes. So I really appreciate the sneak peek at what's coming, the up and coming 2.0 version.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. And, of course, thanks to everyone out there for watching and not listening. I always like to say listening because of the podcast show, but for watching this DABCC TV episode. And until next time, thank you again for watching DABCC TV.